Hello, and welcome to the Market Bull Podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Today on the show, I was joined by Dean Largie, the Managing Director of the recently listed ASX company Australian Critical Minerals under the code ACM. ACM is an exploration company focused in Western Australia targeting materials for the battery metals market. Dean discussed the journey to listing and the decisions involved in the IPO process. Dean highlighted the key projects at ACM with a focus on lithium and rare earth elements. Dean talked in detail about the project locations, the accessibility, the company's plans, and how they are going to execute on their strategy. So, hello, I'm Ben Kostrich, and welcome to the Market Bull Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Dean Largie, recently IPO'd and Managing Director of Australian Critical Minerals under code ACM. Quite exciting because we're recording almost a week and a half after it's debuted on the ASX. So, welcome to the show, Dean.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's great to be here.
So, talking about this industry, it's an IPO predominantly in the exploration side. But before we get into all of that, who are you as a person and what have you already done and how did it bring you to taking on this role and going through the IPO process?
Yeah, no, that's a story in itself, Ben. I was educated here in Western Australia. I developed an early interest in the sort of energy, resources and geology from a combination of my education in high school and the contribution that my father and one of my older brothers had. During my high school, I did a research report on the petroleum industry, and I realised then that how finite the resources industry was and how finite specifically the petroleum industry was. And this put something in the back of my mind, and I was always concerned about, how the planet is going to survive in terms of energy production. Now, my father also, he worked up in Tom Price. This is early 60s. He was always bringing rock samples down, as Tom Price was just being developed at that stage. We had in our house, we had pieces of drill core from banded iron formations and pieces of different various rocks. And my older brother Des, he made this fantastic rock collection, which I was always playing with, and peeling off fibres of asbestos, the mineral serpentinite, which, would be devastated to hear about nowadays, of course.
Very much so.
From there, after high school, I started working. I actually started off in a bank, started off in the R&I bank in head office, and it was a great job, but I wanted more out of life than that as an impatient, 17-year-old. So I went on and worked for a number of drilling companies, both on a oil platform. Then I went into RC drilling, and from there I went into mining, and I worked as an underground miner on the Windera Nickel Project for Western Mining. And then from there I realised that I wanted to make a bigger contribution to life, really. Unbeknown to me, my period working on the oil platform was going to have a large effect on me, because there I got to know some guys from Schlumberger, the downhole geophysics company, and I realised, and that tweaked something into me. So when I decided to go to university, I did geophysics, and then I did geology, and then I went out and worked for a number of mining companies. In terms of the post-university experience, I kicked off with a company called Ashton Mining, who had recently bought a company called Australian Ores and Minerals. And part of Australian Ores and Minerals was a company called Geoscan, run by a very brilliant man called Dr. Frank Honey. Frank Honey had just invented, along with CSIRO, an airborne multispectral scanner. And my early period with the group was dealt with manipulating the spectral imagery and identifying hydrothermal anomalies on big areas of the globe, including Nevada and Chile. And later on, with my time with Ashton, I convinced them to send me across to Chile and Nevada, and I ended up picking up all the initial claims for Ashton Mining USA based on the work that I did the years before from the imagery I interpreted with Ashton. So that was a great start to the industry. Spent about 7 or 8 years with the Ashton Group. Then in the process, I developed a great love for an interest in epithermal deposits and porphyry deposits, intrusive-related deposits, and that drew me to South America, where I was resident out of Peru for about 20 years and working right throughout the Americas and focusing really on porphyries and epithermal deposits. Combined with this period, interestingly, and I didn't realise how sort of important it was at the time, but my father was actually ready for retirement and he had a few hobbies, and he was actually building an electric car. This is the mid-80s.
Well, before the demand is hit now, yeah.
Well, that's right. So he's in his garage and he's got a welder and he's got wheels and he's got batteries and all this sort of thing, and starter motors, and he's hooking up all these chains and contraption, and he actually built himself an electric car run on batteries by the late 80s. And every now and then you'd see him giving a bit of a test drive down the footpath. The neighbours were horrified, but this thing actually ran. And of course, just after that came Elon Musk, and the rest is history.
Yes, yeah.
So that was a great experience, and it was great to have that sort of insight. So I moved on from, during my time in South America, I started building, long-term relationships with, various companies and financiers, and that led me to the group that ended up financing the range of projects that ended up being in the Australian Critical Minerals portfolio.
All right, so that's a lot has happened clearly over your years, and it's interesting that you said it almost started with seeing all these rocks as a young kid, and then it's now progressed into naturally a full career and wanting to find things that are going to make an impression on the world, and we know that the demand for the materials that ACM is looking for are undoubtedly going into this electric car, which I'm sure is vastly different to what your dad made in the garage. Right. But I mean, what is the story of ACM, Australian Critical Minerals? And I mean, now that you've launched, I mean, how has that whole process unfolded?
We started the ACM portfolio based, as I said, on the relationships that I built up through my South American projects. We started off with developing our kaolin assets. Some years ago, kaolin was all the rage, and we could see that there was a real need for high quality kaolin. So we were able to pick up a large tenement holding in kaolin assets, and this is very good quality kaolin. We'd sent it off to South Korea for third-party testing, and some of our properties hold world-class results. But the market isn't really giving companies the love that they need to progress with with kaolin exploration. It will see its own time in the future when the green cement industry starts becoming more important, because it will be. The cement industry is a large contributor to global emissions. So by implementing the use of kaolin, that will substantially reduce those global emissions. So will probably become necessary sometime in the future. But meanwhile, we've moved on and collected a large tenement holding several tenement holdings in areas that are highly prospective for lithium and rare earths, amongst a number of other things. And we've done this by we've been able to get these projects through good relationships with people and being able to do pragmatic, sensible deals where the shareholders will be the ultimate winner.
And I mean, this whole story, naturally, the IPO, it comes out of nowhere, and then everyone's, it's hit the listing. But there's an extended period of time of getting to this and bringing people on board and building the team. So, I mean, who has been a part of the journey to getting to the company to where it is now? Yes,
I have Santon Capital out of Sydney, and in particular Michael Shaw-Taylor, who has kept me fed and alive for several years while we've put these projects together. We've reviewed hundreds of projects, globally to get to this half dozen projects that we have now to put into the listing. So it's been a long process, and I have Michael Shaw-Taylor to thank for, supporting me through that journey. And going through the IPO ourselves, of course, it really does all come down to people, and there's a lot of people to thank. There's all the people that do the due diligence. There's the people who support the float as their lead broker, in our case, State One Stockbroking. And then there's the people who finance you at seed stage, and there's the people who listen to your story at investor roadshows and support you through the IPO, and then after the IPO, our new shareholders, which we welcome, and we thank them for their support.
So, as I say, it's a process that almost happens. You ring the bell and it's there, but naturally there is a lot involved in it. But I mean, diving more into the projects that you've got, and you mentioned the lithium and the rare earth primary targets at the moment, whilst markets are changing, and that is something that we're seeing the overglowing demand for, and just about accessing some supply. So, can you highlight a bit about your primary projects and targets at the company?
Yeah, sure, Ben. Our key projects, the Cooletha project in the Pilbara, which is where we have probably a 30-kilometre strike of outcropping pegmatite swarms. This sits in an area which I see as a district-scale pegmatitic event. It's very large. There's a lot of pegmatites in the Pilbara. They're not rare. But what is rare is for a company to have such a large tenure of these pegmatites. So as I say, we've got 30 kilometres of this pegmatitic material. That's like, a piece of ground from Perth to Rockingham. That's a
Decent area.
That's a substantial piece of ground. Most advanced project is actually in Southern Cross. It's our rare earth project called Rankin Dome. It's a project we have a 51% joint venture with Cooletha Gold. Cooletha have done a great job of doing an early stage shallow auger sampling program on this property. They've identified up to 1,080 ppm of total rare earths in this project. They've put over 300 auger holes into this ground. It still only represents a small part of this total tenement package. So there's still a lot of open sides on this thing which need to be further sampled. But quite immediately we have enough information there to warrant an RC drilling program on that property, and we're planning to commence that in early next month. And then we're mobilising our field crew back up into the Pilbara to start channel sampling and mapping these pegmatites. So that's our immediate two jobs. These are both long-term, large tenement packages. We'll be working on each of them individually, but sort of at the same time as well. As we get results from one, we'll be working out the new, the subsequent drill programs, etc., and we'll be sending our field crews out onto the other one. So we'll be sort of synchronising both these work programs as we go forward through this year and into next year.
Okay, so I'll go through both in a bit more detail, but if we go to the Pilbara project in particular, I mean, it goes without saying that that's a pretty popular area at the moment. Yeah, and I mean, there's clearly a lot of news coming out of there, but when you're talking about these outcroppings and the potential there, I mean, what was so exciting about this particular area, and notably, I mean, what else is surrounding it that really indicates that you could be onto something?
We've got, just north of us, we've got some fantastic projects. First of all, we've got the Tambora North project immediately north, and the geology of that feeds straight into our tenure. They've produced up to 2.5% lithium on that project. And further north from there, we've got Pilbara, the world's biggest hard rock lithium mine. 223 million tonne at 1.27% lithium. And then southwest of that, which is northwest of our property, we've got Wodgina with 259 million tonne at 1.17% lithium. So these are large world-class projects. They sit in an area where there are literally pegmatites right through this whole district. And these pegmatites I see as not really individual sort of events. There's not a great age difference between these pegmatite or pegmatitic intrusives, so that's how we at ACM have come about with the idea that we're dealing with a one huge district scale geological event. And so we have a large tenure, and this is what is the beauty of our property. We've got built into this large tenure security. We don't have a little postage stamp project that we can sort of go in and plug a couple of drill holes into it and kill it. We've got a project that will warrant a long-term, large-scale sampling and drilling programs. 30 kilometres is a big area to cover, and we've literally got pegmatites every. Look, I haven't for the 5 or 10 kilometres that I've walked across, and we've literally got pegmatites. Every 50, 100, 200 metres, you walk across another pegmatite. So we've got a huge tenement hold, and this builds in a lot of security for our shareholders.
I mean, clearly that leads into the next steps, which you highlighted about the drilling. And I mean, with such a large area, I mean, surely you've got to have an idea of where you want to start. And I can imagine there's a lot of investigation as to mapping out exactly where you want to investigate further. So, I mean, what is the plan, and what do you hope to really achieve and start ticking off the boxes in regards to strategy and executing on this area? And I mean, what can investors expect?
We're going to be very methodical. We'll go in there. I've got my initial mapping, but I'm putting a team in there to expand on that and get across the whole tenure, map all these pegmatites, and at the same time have people in there sampling these pegmatites, preferably with channel cuts done with a diamond saw, getting good quality samples, and then we'll be basing further exploration and basing drill targets on that information that comes back from that initial sampling. So immediately we're going to try and develop the highest priority targets across that whole 30 kilometre band, and realistically we'll be focusing on the northwest area where we've got 10 kilometres of these pegmatites, and we'll be focusing in there and planning our highest priority drill targets based on those initial results.
And I mean, naturally in this area, as you said, there's a lot of other companies. It's a popular spot, but I mean, in regards to like infrastructure and just access and ease of access, I mean, what is really the landscape like there for listeners that probably haven't been there? I mean, what is it really like?
Yeah, well, the Pilbara is a beautiful place to be working, and we're very fortunate here on our Cooletha project. We've got to the south of us, we have quite a few very large iron ore mines held by FMG, BHP, Roy Hill, and their infrastructure, their rail lines and their rail service routes all transect our Cooletha tenement. So we're very fortunate we'll be able to use those rail access routes to get right through our tenement, and from there we can disperse laterally east and west using station tracks. So although it's a little bit out of the way, it's for those listeners who don't really understand where it is, we're about 200 kilometres south of Port Hedland, and we're about 200 kilometres northwest of Mount Newman. So that's where we are, and we're about 60 kilometres west of Marble Bar, west-southwest of Marble Bar. So we're great. There's infrastructure is great. We're the nearest, there's a number of mining camps around the region where we'll be working, and ideally we can plug into those mining camps that are run by the likes of BHP. If they're good enough to allow my crew to stay in their mining camp, that would be very helpful and appreciative, and we would be forever thankful. Otherwise, we'll be bringing our own caravans and equipment in and camping on site. There's the Alski Tourist Village, only 60 kilometres south of us, so we can, and that's a great base to be working from as well.
Yeah, and I mean, this now segues to the other project, as we said. You're working two simultaneously, but the Southern Cross, the Rankin Dome project, I mean, whereabouts is that? And again, there's still more questions. I mean, what has been so attractive about securing that? Because I go back to your first point about the hundreds of tenements and projects that you looked at. I mean, the list of figuring out which ones you want to go ahead with, and now this one. I mean, what is the history behind this project?
It's funny that you think exploration and resource development is all about rocks, but it's actually all about people and relationships that you develop with these people. I was very fortunate to be working, doing a small job for Cooletha Gold on one of their kaolin assets, which is a good asset in itself. And I was very fortunate to meet Mark Stowell, the managing director, and we got talking about their projects, and I realised that their Rankin Dome project may well be a good fit for us. And so we started discussing that opportunity and the possibility of us getting into some sort of joint venture arrangement where we could do some good quality work whilst earning an interest, and Cooletha Gold could focus their funds into some of their other assets. And that's the way we went, and that's why it's fantastic to be able to be involved with people who are like-minded, are willing to do a pragmatic deal, be pragmatic in their negotiations, and understand the benefit of a win-win situation, where the idea is to be able to get the best deal and the best outcome for their respective shareholders. And in terms of both the Rankin Dome project and the projects we have in the Pilbara, we're dealing with those sorts of pragmatic and sensible people.
And the Rankin project, this is predominantly looking for the rare earths, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I mean, again, going through that, I mean, what are the processes now to further develop that one, and the drilling and the mapping and the surveys? I mean, what's going through the company's plan to look and utilise that area as well?
Yeah, as I said, Rankin has produced a fantastic rare earth anomaly from these shallow soils. And there's also some very interesting lithium grades in these shallow soils as well. Principally the rare earths that we're dealing with there, the likes of cerium, neodymium, lanthanum. There's also niobium and lithium, as I said. So we want to both expand on the anomaly that's already been identified, and we want to drill in to the high-grade target areas that have already been established by Cooletha Gold. So we're looking at going in and doing an RC, reverse circulation drilling program, on that property early in August.
Okay. And I mean, naturally, there's a lot of considerations with even, again, figuring out where you want to go to and what you want to analyse it. And that's the point of the joint venture there. I mean, what discussions are happening with progressing that? And I mean, naturally, is it quite frequently you're having meetings with the other partners and ideally and figuring out what you want to focus on? I mean, how does that all work?
Yeah, no, Cooletha Gold are a great partner. They're very collaborative, very helpful, and they've got some great geologists working within their team. And so it's actually a pleasure to be able to work with them as we identify our drill targets. And so that's where we've already had a couple of meetings. We've identified more or less where we're going to drilling. Cooletha Gold have done a great job in establishing great relationships with the local landowners.
Yep.
So we have permissions from them. All those things are already in place. So we've got our sort of initial drill targets at the high-grade areas that we have been identified through the August sampling program. So we'll go in and start drilling, probably initially drill about 1,000 metres worth of RC drilling on the best target areas of the area that's already been established from these shallow auger soil samples. And just after that, we'll be starting to progress and expand through the rest of this tenure, because what's already been sampled here at Rankin Dome really only represents about 15% of the whole tenement area. So there's still a lot of open ground there yet to be covered.
My God. Yeah, well, and that's the thing I always look at is when you said before, like Perth, Rockingham is 30 kilometres, and you go, that's a hell of a lot of area to cover. And these areas, it's really about where do you start and the potential of, again, expanding it. But I mean, from your point, naturally going back to where you began and an idea of trying to do something bigger and better and something outside to really help achieve, I guess, better for people at the end of the day. I mean, what has been your draw card to taking on this role in particular? And also, I mean, where do you see the ACM feeding into this big solution of where we're approaching with this electrification and these net carbon emissions and all of this? I mean, what goes through your mind in taking on this position?
Yeah, no, it has been a journey, and it's been a great journey getting it to this stage. But in reality, this is just the beginning. I've always been of the viewpoint to achieve large resources, you need large tenure, right? To have large financiers come behind you and back you, you need large tenure to show them that you've got the capacity to develop large resources that would be of interest to them. Now here we're talking about two things. We're talking about both other large resource companies that are in production that may be interested in getting a piece of your action. But we're also talking about large end users who want to secure those offtakes. And for those people, for those groups, you need large tenements and be able to show them that you've got large scale scope and ability to get into large scale production and produce the amount of resources that they're going to need to be able to secure their customers going forward. And so for that reason, all our projects, no matter whether they're the kaolin assets or the lithium pegmatite assets or the rare earth assets, they all have scale and scope to meet that criteria.
Oh, well, and that's the discussion that I'm hearing, and it's almost been this inflection point, I almost want to call it, where there's been such an underinvestment in resources and the basic commodities that make up everything that we use. And if you look at that over the backdrop over the last 20 years, there's only really been limited influence into that. And now we're seeing that, well, no, we really have this looming concern of where are we going to get all these raw materials, and that requires companies to go out and find these areas. And of course, it's not their job to execute it and build it up to the scale of some of these multi-billion-dollar companies, but if they find it, then it, as you said, it helps the bigger fish then start coming in, and that's where the partnerships, the joint ventures, and I can imagine you never really get a holiday in a position like this. But I mean, naturally, there's going to be a lot of news flow and talks coming out. So for investors and listeners even want to follow the company and keep track of what the developments are and what's happening, I mean, where can they go and where can they access this information?
Yes. Well, there's a number of questions in there. First of all, the rush to secure the resources to provide the energy for the globe going forward is really becoming quite critical. The amount of resources that the globe needs to be completely sort of carbon neutral is outstanding.
We had a lot of catching up to do.
We have. If we look at 2019, global production levels of some of these metals that are required to phase out the use of fossil fuels, by 2030, we're about 400 years behind just in base metals, 400 years behind in production in nickel, 200 years behind in production of copper. We're 40 years behind in neodymium, 30,000 years behind in the production of germanium. Even some of the more common elements, dysprosium, 200 years behind. So you can see the requirement to really ramp up exploration for these assets. The governments really do need to get on board and open up ground to be easily accessible to exploration if we have any chance of developing the resources needed that are going to fuel a green energy future.
Well, and it's been set down from top level governments across the world that these dates are set. And now it's that kick in the bum being like, well, God, we got to get a wiggle on here because we're so far behind in all these minerals and all these aspects. And I think there's this disconnect in realizing how long it takes to you find these areas, explore them, and actually execute on them. It's not something that you can just open your phone and get a tweet and boom, it's suddenly there. It's like a mine is completely different, an exploration is completely different, and getting those steps underway takes a lot of time. And we're in an environment where people just want things right now, and exactly right in front of them, and that's just not the case, which is as I say, this inflection point that we're approaching.
Well, I think we already are at that inflection point. The necessity to explore for these materials is going to be the impetus for a massive demand curve. Investors can look forward to this demand fueling share prices of the likes, of companies like us who are exploring for these assets to be very positive. If we've got good ground and good results, then we have a chance of securing good resources going forward, then we're looking for a very positive future in terms of our own market valuation. We're looking at a great future for an extended period of time. As we go through the ups and downs of exploration, there will always be forevermore this demand behind
driving it,
our market capitalisation.
Yeah. Well, again, it's in the right spots. The areas are notably known. They're not uncommon areas. I'd like to say that in an environment like this, you can raise money in areas that no one's ever heard of. But both those areas are well respected, world renowned locations, and it's not like you're just picking up a tool and going anywhere. But for, as I said, listeners that want to follow the company and learn more, where can they go?
Well, we've got a website, ozcriticalminerals.com.au, and we've got a lot of information on there already, and as we build our company, we'll be expanding on that information on our website about our projects and our results.
Awesome. Yeah, as I said, I when I was uncovering the website, there's a fair bit on there, and naturally there's room to expand it and grow. And absolutely. I've seen the social pages as well, and of course there's the ASX announcements that come out. But yeah, thank you so much, Dean, for taking the time to speak with me. There's a fair bit coming up, I can imagine. Is there any final points you wanted to throw in before we wrap it up?
Look, of course, I don't do this all on my own. There are people behind me, at my side, giving me guidance and impetus, and our board is very supportive, and I benefit greatly from the assistance and guidance of our chairman, Mr. Michael Wright, who is a fantastic pedigree. He's had 20 years in executive of held resources behind him. He's developed 5 gold mines and a zinc mine through his time with Herald. He was the founding director and ultimately sold Herald Resources for $580 million. He was the founding director and chairman of General Mining Corp, which held previously the Mount Cattlin Lithium mine in Western Australia down near Ravensthorpe. So he's well accustomed to the lithium industry as well. And of course, my non-executive director, Gary Brabham, fantastic geologist, geostatistician, a great resource geologist, has held directorships in De Grey, technical director of Adamas. We've known each other for about 30 odd years. I've taken him through a number of projects in South America. We've been through South Africa and Botswana together on a number of projects. And I know he has a fantastic mind, very astute, and is a great technical person to have at my side. So altogether, I think we're a great team, and we're going to be able to lead Australian Critical Minerals into a great future.
Well, it circles back to your point that you mentioned about people, relationships, and really a team. And from that, yeah, it sounds like you've got good relationships, a good group around you, and that hopefully delivers the result. So thank you, Dean, for taking the time to speak with me on the show, and looking forward to seeing how it all evolves, and hopefully have you back in the coming months to give me an update on what's been progressing.
Thank you, Ben, and I look forward to updating you and the shareholders and joining us on our journey.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow the Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.